What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. My name is Braden Carlson.
I'm Taylor Jesse.
My name is Shane, or as you might know me, Postart.
I'm Matthew Myers, or Macho Match.
And today we are talking do's and don'ts. I kind of opened it up to like pet peeves that people do at rocket launches that you'll see. And really what we're diving into here is we're not going to name any names or point any fingers. But if you happen to partake in one of the things you hear on this episode while you're at a rocket launch, you should probably go ahead and stop. Because today we are discussing do's and don'ts of high-power rocket launches. And I got to say, mostly don'ts. Because the do's are kind of self-explanatory when you have the context of the don'ts. And from what I understand, Macho Matt over there has quite a don't story to get us going. And then I think we're each going to hit on like a quick one, and then we're going to go straight to Patreon because we got a lot of input on this one. If you want to partake in the next podcast, patreon.com/rocketvlogs, or you can send us an email to contact@aggpodcast.com. Anyway, Matt, take it away.
All right, so I think this don't is probably a very special case don't. Hopefully this doesn't happen very often, but at one event Taylor and I went to, I was in our little rocket tent trying to get a motor put together, and as I was trying to, read the instructions on the motor build, or not motor build, but the motor instruction sheet, I was getting the O-rings all lubed up, and then some guy comes over to me, and we were kind of talking a little bit about it, and then at some point he started picking up the things that I was working on, and then at some point he actually tried to build the motor for me. So don't here is please don't try to build somebody else's motor for them. And I mean, okay, I should have been like, no, don't do this. But
well, and I wasn't even context.
Yeah.
Well, and somehow I didn't notice this was happening, and then he tells me, and I'm like, I would have lit this guy up. I just couldn't believe that even happened.
In my mind, I think this must have been when I was a little less experienced. And I was just like, oh, okay, sure. You can help me try to put the motor together.
Well, because I think you wouldn't think that someone would even do that. So you're like, you're sort of in shock, right?
Yeah.
You kind of just lock up. Shock. You're like, what?
And after it happened, I was like, that was really weird, and I really don't feel like flying this motor now because I have no idea if this is even right.
Yeah, I think you took it apart and put it back together, which would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Was he like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, let me help you out?
I think it was somebody that maybe they saw me, just reading the instructions and was like, oh, he probably doesn't know what he's doing. Let me just show him how to do it. And then he just kind of, stepped in. And I think he was an older person.
You were a little less experienced, and I think there was a little, you were working your way through it, not necessarily like struggling, but sort of talking to yourself and making sure the O-rings are good. And it was I think a case of like, this guy, let me help you, and then it just turned into like
him doing it, and
you just got to do this, and he's putting it all together, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
what the heck is that?
After that happened, I told you, Taylor, you were like, what?
Yeah, I was pretty.
That was a really good Taylor impression, I have to say. The facial expressions were like very, very good. Yeah, that is actually insane. I was gonna say, people always love to hear unsolicited advice for sure, but that's like a step further. Unsolicited assistance is crazy.
Just straight up inserting himself into I can't believe that even happened. I think I asked,
set aside, champ. I got it.
Yeah, I just remember I kept asking him, like, he actually, like, I'm like, he actually put his hands on it. He's like,
run this by me one more time.
Putting it together.
Oh my god, dude, that's crazy. Yeah, definitely don't do that.
Yeah. I'm hopeful that's this is just a one-time thing,
rocket prep assault.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah. God. Okay. Well, I don't really know if anybody's just gonna beat that, and I think Taylor's is gonna go a little long-winded. So, Postart, you added one to the list. You want to read that one out because that's something I've not thought of, but it's great.
Yeah. There's always pens, or at least at every launch that I've been to, there's always pens up by where you grab your flight cards, and they're by the second day of a launch, they're gone. They're never there. Like, don't take the pens, return them.
Those aren't yours. I will say I have before grabbed one and like just not thought about it and like walked away with it, but I took it back. I didn't just go, yeah, this is mine now.
Yeah.
They must have left these out here for free. That's so don't do that. And my opening don't at rocket launch is something I see happening quite a lot lately for some reason. Do not turn your electronics on at the flight line with charges connected to check for continuity. What
all the time
is
it happens.
going on?
Yeah.
People like rockets just laying fully assembled with charges in them on tables, and you start hearing beeps, and they're like, "Yep, it's good." I'm like, "No, it's not good. Don't do that."
We hear altimeters powering up all the time, which, okay, if you want to do that, whatever. But then you start hearing like beep, 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 beep. And you're like, what? Fully assembled. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then every once in a while you get the nose cone through the canopy where someone blows their charges and almost puts an eye out.
Like, oh, what happened? Yeah, seriously. Take it from me. I understand wanting to give that check. As the person who had to carry his 60-pound V2 back through a muddy field because one of the altimeters wasn't beeping the right continuity. I get not wanting to have to bring your rocket all the way back. But what I really want a lot less is for ejection charges to go off with a bunch of people standing nearby. And I don't care if it's a 2-inch rocket with a 0.5 gram ejection charges or an 8-inch V2 with 6 gram ejection charges. Just do not do that. It's unhinged. All right, I'm getting off the podium off there, that one. But it's just like, it's unbelievably, it seems so intuitive, right? It's like, don't do that kind of scenario, but people seem to think it's a do. Anyway, Taylor, go off, King.
I had something kind of long-winded, but for lack of show prep,
what's
I'll
new, right?
I kind of forgot what that point was that I had in the pocket the other day. So, really, I don't know. I just noticed doing like pad manager and stuff at big launches. Just this, you see people doing the same stuff over and over again, and it's just like lean the launch pad away from the flight line. Like, you don't tilt it toward the flight line because like for obvious reasons, right?
It's like very self-evident.
I mean, the chances of something happening are very slim, but that's just like one of those things that everyone should know. And then if you point it out, like, oh, I think everyone's had that moment where someone said, hey, you should tilt that pad away from the flight line, and you go, oh yeah, you're right, and that's just what you do, not like over and over again. And the same with arm your electronics before you put the igniter in.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
That one's crazy. I see that a lot too.
All the time, especially if you like not only like racking a rocket, but if you get to be a pad manager and you're actively like watching everyone down there at the pads, it's like it just over and over again. And then people look at you like you're crazy when you like tell them that, and because a lot of times they'll put the igniter in and hook the leads up. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, shut them down on that. Like, that is crazy.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then working RSO, you'll see people bring up rockets with the igniters in. Sometimes like high power stuff, which is crazy.
That hasn't been a thing that's like, it's specifically carved out of the rules because it used to be kind of a common practice.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been for like 10 years.
Like at least 10 years. I mean,
and I know all about the J615. So does Matt. Okay.
That was
the Aerospike nozzle looks really cool and fun until you have to take your motor halfway apart at the pad. But you just don't do that before you take your rocket, especially just like walking through the crowd of people and everything. Yeah, that's It's a crazy one that I see a lot, and people are like, well, what about like if it's, I have an M650 or whatever, and it's hard to get the igniter in. It's like, I mean, you chose the motor, man. You knew what you were signing up for.
I promise you it's possible to get the igniter in with the rocket on the pad standing up. You might not like it, but like it's possible.
I have to say, your M685 experiences made me like really unhappy about trying with my M650, and then it just went in. I was like, oh, guess Taylor's just dumb.
Well, I'd only flown Medusa nozzle ones, which were a little bit trickier. Yeah. So it's like you kind of had to have one of those outside ports lined up at the core, otherwise it like with the expansion cone of the nozzle, like it was hard. You really had to poke it in there. But I think with the single throat nozzle, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, because mine went straight in. All right, well, I guess that kind of wraps up our specific complaints. But we do have. Oh, go ahead.
One more I thought of, like, and this sort of applies to like, like maybe if someone hasn't been to a big launch before, just because things are like on a bigger scale, but don't just walk out on the range. I see that a lot where it's like you don't like range is closed. That means anything past the fence, like no, even if your rocket landed there and it's not super close to a launch pad, just wait. There will be a message that says you can go recover your rockets. Don't just walk out there.
I miss the we really miss having Terry on the LCO mic at Argonia launches, because he always had good ones for people that were trekking out there. He'd be halfway through reading a flight card and just be like, "Oh, hang on, sir, where are we going?" Just stuff like that. It's awesome.
And then they'll like look around. They're like, he's like, "Yes, you."
Yeah. Yep.
You right there. Yes. Turn around. Go back.
Yeah, it's a classic. All right. Well, we're going to go straight into the Patreon stuff. This is an interesting one because I guess I wasn't clarified on the rules either here. But Eric Beaver says no beer allowed. I got busted for this. I get it, it's an FAA thing, but I feel like once you're done flying, grab a cold one, especially if you're celebrating a cert. Ooh. But it appears to be more of an FAA rule if the waiver is open. I was under the impression that as long as you weren't flying anything, or you were done flying for the day, it was fine. But that may have just been something we heard at a small club launch that conveniently carved out a rule for said purposes.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always heard the no drinking thing, which really makes sense because, I'm done flying, but then you're like, I'll have one more. One more flight after one more beer or whatever.
Right.
Like that. Only bad things could come from that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get it too. I once saw somebody get in trouble for having an open container. Taylor saw it as well. We don't have to discuss who it was, but we definitely watched it happen.
Yeah, just walked right up to the front of the range.
Yeah, and the RSO was like, "I hope that's not alcohol." He's like, "If it is, we have to shut this whole thing down." I was like, "I don't know if it's that drastic," but yeah. Needless to say, the person who got caught with that was probably extremely embarrassed. Anyway, we're gonna move on. If anybody happens to know the exact rules for alcohol restrictions in the FAA and rocket launches, everything, please comment them, but please only comment them if you actually know what's going on, because there seems to be quite a bit of misinformation going around. Matt's in the clear. You can drink all the NA beers you want.
Woohoo! That's another good thing about it,
Dylan Bender says one shouldn't borrow a casing such as a 75-38-40, lose it, and then not buy the owner a new one. Huh.
Oh. Huh.
That's an oddly specific case to choose.
What fun would that be? What fun would that be?
Interesting.
That's a good example, though, to bring up. I don't know why that would ever.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a story behind it or something.
Yeah. Absolving those specifics, I don't know if absolving is the right word there. I guess kind of.
It's still there, yeah.
I'm a writer for sure. Please believe me. Anyway, yeah, don't borrow things unless you can actually afford to replace them. It's not.
You could afford to replace them and still not.
Okay, well, here's what I'm getting at, though. When I was young, a lot of times people offered to let us borrow stuff, and we did, even though we definitely didn't have the money to replace it if something went wrong. So let me not lead by example here and suggest that you probably go ahead and don't do that. Because you might be walking around for 3 hours looking for a Kazan 29mm case with your dad instead of having fun and flying more rockets. Only for the owner of that case to pull over on his way out of the launch and go, "You guys haven't been doing this for very long, have you?" And he walks like 10 feet out in the field, bends over, picks the case up. He's like, "I'll see you guys next time." Gets in his car.
Wow.
And I still to this... Unfortunately, my friend Justin, who did this, he's since passed away. I don't know to this day if he somehow had already got the case back and was just messing with us or not. Or if he legitimately just walked right up to it, because that seems impossible to me. I swear, he just like, "You guys haven't been doing this for long." Walks 10 feet.
Although that kind of goes with what we were talking about in the last podcast with you not having memories of recovering rockets in the early days.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I have some.
I just can't find this.
No, it was crazy because it was so much closer to the road than we thought. And yeah, part of me still thinks like it had come straight back down and somebody brought it to him and he just like had it in his coat pocket to mess with us. Unfortunately, I'll never know. But yeah, don't borrow stuff if you don't intend to replace it. Sorry, Matt.
There is intention to replace.
That's
fair.
He has intention to replace it, so it's different.
And we did bring the new data to the table that Taylor took like over a year to replace the closure that he destroyed.
Yeah.
So Matt's got a pretty loose timeline he can operate on right now.
Yeah, he still has another 8 months.
2 weeks.
No, actually,
it was Cloudburst last year.
But
it was Cloudburst last year. Yeah, and we do need it before Airfest.
Okay. That's really the only reason the case matters is because of the Punisher flight. Otherwise, I don't need.
Hopefully, Matt's gonna be there to see it. Am I right?
He will. He's made provisions for it.
Is your Punisher gonna be ready to fly this weekend?
I don't know.
Dude, I wouldn't even worry about it. The weather looks like garbage.
What? Oh, really?
Well, it might clear up. It's still early, but
yeah.
All right. Well,
Punishers, it's not looking good right now. But I'm fixing to get other things prepared.
Lean into it. Like, I saw the weather report. Figured I might as well take my time. Get this right.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm leaning into with my projects right now too. But
I think if we, as long as Matt's there, then.
Yeah.
Then all is
I actually did hustle finish my Nike Smoke to fly at Tripoli Vegas only for the Gene dry lake bed to turn into the Gene lake bed. Joe Hill sent me a video there was like a bunch of people stranded out there and he opened the back door on the camper that he was staying with, a friend of his, and it looked like a lake. Like it did not look like the dry lake bed. It looked like they were on a boat.
Dude, if I camped out there and then woke up to that, I would be like a little bit panicked.
Yeah, seriously.
That's like worst case scenario. You're like, no
you gotta,
way.
And it just kept raining. So yeah, like people with campers and RVs and stuff. So hopefully they're all good. They all have water. I shot a video that I guess I'm going to publish, but I was just like, anyway, here's the Gene dry lake bed and here's the old Gold Strike Casino. It's halfway demolished now. This was like a staple of rocketry stuff at one point. And here's me unloading my unflown rocket in the garage. And my unflown K555. So, but I think I might as well post it. At least so people know I tried to fly a rocket. Anyway,
that's what you get for trying to fly a rocket.
I know. That's why I should never do it. That's why I should never do it. I should just film everybody else's rockets. Kevin Rulin says his biggest pet peeve is smoking. Why when around all those combustibles? And a particular vendor comes to mind that we won't name, but remember a lot of chain smoking inside their facility for selling rocketry related items. This was like 20 years ago, but yeah, it's not happening anymore. That vendor may not even be around anymore. Who knows?
Some vendor even made a example after someone gave him crap about it and put a lit cigarette in the core of a propellant grain to prove that it won't light it.
That is crazy of that vendor. Anyway. Dude, I do love like all the old Earl Cagle videos and stuff. There's just people at the pads smoking, cigarette hanging out of their mouth while they're putting igniters in and stuff. Yeah, it's best to just go ahead and
behind their ear. One's lit.
Yeah, yeah, and they're clustering 115 black powder motors with a pound of black powder.
Wow, cigarette in the mouth. Now this is flash in the pan ignition.
Yeah. Exactly. And soon it'll be flash in my face ignition. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you're gonna smoke, you know, buy cars or whatever. Preferably, you know, not around things that are highly combustible.
I remember one LDRS that we went to when I was like 11. And my dad came along with us, and he used to smoke. And I remember I read all the rules, you know, and I was very serious about it because I thought we were going to get kicked out because it said, you know, I think it was when we went up to Canada and they had a bunch of different rules. And like one of them was like, you can't be within 20 feet of any rocket stuff. And I'm like, Dad, you got to go way over there to smoke.
Get up.
He's like, I don't think anyone's going to see me. Like, it's fine. And I'm like, no, you got to go over there. We're going to get kicked out.
We have a Rocket Dog appearance on this podcast.
Yeah, he's got his ears up right now. He's woofing. It's King.
All right.
Woof.
New merch drop soon. Ryan Emenegger says, for me, it's people who hold up launching pads because of troubleshooting altimeters and trackers. If you're having issue past a power cycle, just take it off the rail, figure it out, and then go back out.
Oh,
One more small thing comes to mind. When you can't quite hear when a launch is going to happen, the LCO doesn't wait for a thumbs up. I've gotten a good scare while loading an E-match when other pads have been launched. Well, let's address the first one first, because I wholeheartedly agree. Mm-hmm. Even if it means carrying my 60-pound V2 back from the M distance at Midwest Power.
While getting made fun of by Tim.
Yeah, over the PA, we might add. He's like, no, you're not supposed to. I don't remember what he said. He's like, you're supposed to take it out there or something like that. I already did. Yeah, if it's gonna be more than like you said, like a power cycle and maybe a minute or two, just unload it and come back and try again. And especially at a big launch.
I'll add to that and just say, man, have your S together when you go out to the pad. Because it's painful when it's like I've seen it being a pad manager and stuff where it's just like, it's like, which I'm not telling anyone to rush, you know, like obviously there's you know, people do what they're comfortable with, but man, there's some times where it's clear that they are not, where's my masking tape? And they're like improvising on the spot. I'm like, you could have got all your stuff ready before you came out here, or just like you realize you don't have what you need and just like go back. To the car.
That's me. Like if I forgot something, I refuse to go back and I'll make it work. I've like pinned E-matches or into rockets with like wrapping it around a piece of the pad and putting the rocket weight on top of it.
I've definitely done that too.
Held rockets up with giant clumps of dirt and stuff like that. Again, probably don't do as I say in these particular instances. Just like Taylor said, have your poop in a group when you go out there. But the second one, if you, I get that you can't quite hear the LCO and they don't wait for thumbs up, but it kind of ironic. It falls in the same category of holding up the launch process if you can't hear it to give a thumbs up. So I'm gonna put 50% fault on that one if I'm honest. Yeah, it's a whole thing. I assume he's talking about like when you're out at a pad bank and they're like, "Hey, D pads, can you hear us? We're gonna fly the A pads or whatever."
I see.
Corey B says putting in an igniter before arming electronics and pointing the rail towards the crowd to load the rocket.
Oh,
Taylor hit those head on. Those two are common. Attitude is everything. Being nice to volunteers makes everything more fun for everyone, which is one thing that you wouldn't think we would have to touch on here, right? Like that's not something we should be like, okay, kids, when we're going to a rocket launch, what do we do? Be nice. But there are quite a few of you out there. Maybe you listen to this podcast, maybe you're not. I would say give it a shot. Have a little patience. Taylor and I really got tested at LDRS, and I mean, we were on the brink of losing it, but we still kept it together.
We kept it together.
I got a little unhinged after the rail fell on my head and my hands and Rocket were covered in black gunk, but we don't need to get into that.
My face was just getting the gnarliest sunburn when we had to wait for 3 hours to launch our rockets. But
standing up at the front of it was a whole thing. But what we didn't do was go up and scream at people, and I've seen people do that for much, much less offensive things.
Yeah, and ultimately, especially like if you're at a big launch, like the launch director has the final say. So like if you don't like it, that's just what it is. Like go to a different launch. Like they have to make a call, and sometimes that's a call you're not going to be happy with. Unfortunately,
I saw one time it's interesting because it's happened to me before too, where somebody flew my rocket instead of they flew it with the rocket that was supposed to be flying. But I saw an instance, again, no names or clubs, but this guy was not ready for his rocket to fly, and so he didn't see it take off. So he went up and screamed at the LCO for launching his rocket, and it was not on purpose. It's not like he went, "Hey, are you ready?" and didn't wait for him to say something. It's just, granted, not a great accident to have when you're an LCO, but it happens sometimes. And like I said, it happened to me, and incidentally, I just tracked my rocket and went and picked it up and didn't say anything about it. But this guy chose to go quite the opposite route and scream right in the face, like 6 inches away from the LCO, spit in his face. And then he forgot to attach a quick link to part of his rocket. And somehow that was also the LCO's fault because he flew the rocket before he was ready, and that's why it separated. The guy was a little unhinged and notoriously so. But that was a bad day.
That all reminds me of an incident when I was RSO at an LDRS.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not. My job is to try to be safe. Make sure the rockets are not going to cause any problems, right? And I said, you're good to go. Your nose cone feels a little loose though, and it was a draggy rocket. I was like, if it were me, I'd put a little bit of tape on there just to snug it up on the shoulder of the nose cone, standard stuff, right?
Right.
And the guy goes, "Oh yeah, sure, fine. Thanks for the tip." Like 20 minutes later, he comes back screaming at me that
wasn't it his friend? Wasn't it a different guy that was with him?
Oh, maybe it was, or his son.
Yeah,
I think it was his son. Yeah. I guess the rocket came in ballistic, and he came back screaming at me saying, "This rocket's flown this many times and it's never had a problem. And the one time someone tells me to put tape on it, parachute doesn't come out and it comes comes in ballistic and is destroyed. Now my son's crying.
That rocket's in the ground because of you was the quote that you brought back to the flight line after your volunteer.
Wow. And I couldn't help but giggle as he walked away. Not because of the pain he was in, but I mean, that was not my fault.
Because of the absurdity of, and I mean, it's not like you were like, I'm not signing this unless you put tape on it. You kind of just threw it out. I mean, I've had RSOs tell me I can't fly something because they didn't like like Shane's rocket, when the guy could see that not every inch of the shroud lines was wrapped in the parachute because it was a clear fiberglass rocket. So we made Shane unpack it and repack it because that was going to burn the shroud lines.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that stuff. Like,
and it was funny because Shane, I think it was your level 1, wasn't it? And
I mean, it's happened twice with that rocket.
Yeah, and I was just like, it's fine. He's got the shoe protector in there. And he's like, I pack man-rated parachutes. I was like, all right. And he's like, it was really funny because he specified. He's like, not for skydiving, for ultralights. They're backup parachutes. They save people's lives. I was like, all right, guy. Anyway, we'll go ahead and take this 30-inch
hockey parachute.
Yeah.
I've flown those without shoe protectors before, and they got a little burned up, and then they still opened anyway. So, again, don't listen. I'm saying a lot of things that shouldn't be taken as advice. It's things that I've done in my years. Typically my early teenage ones that weren't great but functioned okay. But yeah, to get back on track here, just it doesn't matter how right you think you are, and this is good wisdom for life in general, actually. You don't have to be, as Taylor might say, a D about it. Just, let's try and keep calm and level-headed, and remember that this is a hobby high-powered rocket launch, and there's not a lot on the line typically.
Did I drop a D in this podcast?
No, but it was just homage to you get your S together.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be clean.
All right, we're going to see a couple recurring themes here. UPS Rocket Man says, first and foremost, arm electronics before any igniter is installed. If you have an altimeter, you should pull your rocket out of the pad. Here's a good one, though. If a heads-up call is made, please don't be the guy everyone is waiting on to stand up. Yeah, that's another good Terry LCO moment. Yeah. Where he's like, we need everybody. You, under the red canopy, sitting drinking the lemonade. Everybody needs to be standing.
Even you.
Yeah.
And then call someone out by name.
Yeah. So, pay attention to those. Keep an eye on your rocket. Don't expect others to track it for you. Yeah, that's a good one, too. It's always nice when somebody saw the rocket come down. But I have seen an instance like that where somebody got super upset because they were like, oh, it's going high, so if anybody has an eye on it, please let me know. And then nobody saw it because it was a tiny rocket that went super high. And then he was super mad that nobody kept track of it.
Oh, come on, nobody saw that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? Nobody saw that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Don't give out unsolicited advice. If somebody needs help, they will ask for it. Don't be everyone's rocket dad is a t-shirt that needs to be a thing. Don't be everyone's rocket dad. You don't need to be the science teacher for every person you see that looks like they're under 30. The people that have flown 12-inch rockets on impulse clusters. I know it looks really enticing to tell us that the twist and tape method's not good or that we shouldn't be flying 9 volts. But the craziest part is that we didn't ask. Do you remember asking? I don't remember asking. I'm just going completely off the rails here. Yeah, we get it. We get the LiPo thing. It's awesome. Cool. I didn't ask. Yeah, that's a dude. Don't be everyone's rocket dad. It's a sick shirt idea. Fly within your abilities. If you're going to push your boundaries, make sure you know what you're getting into. That is a very, very good one too. shout out to the people just like buying Blackhawk 54 kits and slamming L's in them. How many when they first launched that kit? You remember how many people had that thing going on, Taylor? There's like this the CTI. What's the Blue Streak 6XL 54?
Well, originally it was L730 was the like OG L, just the classic CTI.
Yeah, and people were like, cool, minimum diameter rocket with 54 millimeter L motor that fits perfect. I'm going to slam this together with 5-minute epoxy, and here we go.
I mean, a lot of times it worked. It's just like...
All right, we're trying to make a point here, Taylor.
I know.
All right, so 54 is fine. Yeah, be as dangerous as you want with 54. But if you go to 75, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is a good one, though. It's and I want to double back here for a second on the Rocket Dad thing. If somebody needs help, they will ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, yeah, it may seem like a dumb question to you initially, but then you run into things like people not knowing they needed to glue their N1000 together, or people not changing their batteries that sat for 8 months. These kind of things. So if you have a doubt in your mind, just ask, because it's not worth the to go back to Dylan Bender's example, like a 75-38-40 case. That would be bad.
Well, I've had quite a few people that were like, I could tell we're like nervous to ask, but they're like, do you think you could just like watch us put this motor together? Because I know you've done it a bunch. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm happy as long as I'm not in the middle of doing something that looks stressful. I'm happy to do that.
You're gonna be like, oh wow, yeah, of course you need my help. oh, maybe you shouldn't be flying this if you're that dumb. Yeah, I can
crazy
promise
is
you,
people kind of act like that sometimes.
Hey, that's
like, what, you don't know how to put it you don't know how to put that together? Maybe step back and fly a single-use motor.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that does happen a lot. So in that light, I could see why you might be afraid to ask for help. But here's what we can do: we can reapply the logic we just had here to those kind of people. And I guess you can't say I don't remember asking. But you didn't ask for their thoughts on whether or not you should be doing this. You ask for help, and if they don't want to cooperate, if they want to be like that, give them the old rusty shackle for throw some sand in their eyes and find somebody else.
Pocket sand. I feel like this is like Brandon's Rocket telehealth therapy.
Yeah, I'm just completely unwinding. And another thing. I'm gonna bust out the Seinfeld voice.
Now
we're gonna get.
No, Sam's not here to gas you up on it. So,
dude, she really was.
Dude, she still talks about it.
Apparently, my Seinfeld impression is pretty good, but you're gonna have to catch me at a launch with Taylor's girlfriend Sam out there if you really want me to dig into that. What were you gonna say, Taylor?
I don't know.
All right. Well, as someone who has been an RSO and LCO, this is still UPS Rocket Band. Please respect the volunteers who make the launch possible. Good. If it's your first high power launch, talk to as many experienced flyers as you can. This is a really good one, actually. Just be careful about who, seems experienced but might not be. Because sometimes you might trust somebody. Tells you your ejection charges are a little funky. And then your Polecat Nike smoke comes in ballistic. Okay? So
or that a Pringles can makes a good adapter.
Yeah. That's anyway. Definitely seek advice is what we're trying to get here.
You should make a Pringles can adapter shirt.
Oh. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. What?
Well, not an actual Pringles can.
It was a Pringles can 75mm 54 adapter.
Oh.
And it failed, so the K motor went about a foot up into my rocket and torched everything behind it.
What rocket was that?
It was my first Nike Smoke. That's why it was like 6 inches shorter.
The Ecoms Ekin.
Yeah. The Ecoms Ekin. And I think, honestly, UPS Rocket Man's last bit of advice for do's and don'ts here might be the best I've ever seen. He says, if you see the anti-gravity group at a launch, buy them a case of Diet DDP.
That's a good one.
Boy, do we need it at Airfest. We went through record number of
Dude, right now,
Diet DDP last year.
Shane and I think I sent the picture to the group chat. Shane and I both shopped a Diet DDP sale, and Shane hadn't realized that I had shopped a sale as well. He thought I only bought one. So now we have 6 12-packs of Diet DDP.
You both had the same thought, like, wow, what a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I knew we had
stocked
one
up.
in the fridge, and then I found the deal, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go buy these," because it was buy 2 get 2 free.
Who
and
got
I get home, and I set them down, and there was 2 more on the floor, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, so we're stacked up right now. The Diet DDPs are flowing.
You know what's crazy about Airfest last year is that Matt ended up not showing up, and we still went through a record amount of Diet DDP.
Why so
We were
many
just like,
Diet
nah,
DDPs?
no water. We'll just drink Diet Dr. Pepper.
Dude,
I really
how
think
many
we
did
need to
we
reach
go
out.
through?
I think we had 3 full 12-packs gone, right?
That's what I thought. That is
Dang.
1 a day. That's terrible.
And that means we were each drinking 4.
Yeah.
Yikes.
That's so bad.
Yeah, that is
Think we
kind
could
of
beat
absurd.
it this year?
Yeah, especially if people bring us Diet DDP.
Mm.
If you bring us a Diet DDP, we will drink it. All right? If they
Like
if
on
you
the
build
spot,
it, they will
we'll-
come.
We got to drink it right then and there.
We got a shot. If someone brings us a can, we have to shotgun it.
no.
Don't say
This
that. Don't
could go
say that.
so bad. No.
Like getting iced. You got DDP'd.
If anybody, by the way, shows up to Cloudburst or LDRS or Airfest wearing the Nigel the Rocket Cat slides, I will give you a Diet DDP, fresh and cold out of the cooler. Emma Humphreys says, "Don't argue with the RSO over the ceiling. It doesn't matter if you're a pilot." Interesting. A lot of things can apply with that last statement too. You do get there was one case fairly recently where Taylor and I had pretty good ground to stand on with the flight ceiling.
That's
being,
the only time that. Yeah. Anyway, that was just an interesting launch.
they
but-
might as well have said that the flight, like the cloud ceiling, was at 10 feet. Like that's how drastically obvious it was that it was wrong. But we didn't complain about it. We didn't say anything about it. Granted, we're not pilots, so I guess we're not.
Well, not to anybody.
Yeah, that's true. We definitely internalized about it, and that's what you do. All right, you take your anger, you talk about people behind their backs. That's what you're supposed to do.
Oh, that reminds. Speaking of that launch, a good etiquette: don't pick up anyone's rocket unless they specifically send you to go pick up their rocket.
And Taylor has
Under any
once again
circumstances.
jumped ahead on our
Oh,
very
no.
last talking point.
Is it on the list?
It kinda. It's actually fairly applicable to Matt's situation as well, the one we talked about initially, and it's just Rocket Kyle says, people touching my stuff without being invited to do so.
Oh, yeah, because that kind of falls in line with like someone comes by your tent and is just like starts touching all your stuff, like picking up your rockets and stuff. That really annoys me.
It happens a lot. Again, it was another thing I ran into a lot being a young person in Rocketry, where people would just walk up and be like, well, let's see how you did. And I'm like, yeah, let's not actually. Don't touch my stuff. And that still comes up fairly often, I'll say. Like, maybe not full blown, like picking it up, but people just be like, wow, look at the paint on that. Just like drag their finger down it. I'm like, is it necessary? Like, you don't need to feel pain to appreciate it, right? Or the worst thing in my mind in that case is you're like, let's see if the clear coat looks like S, or no, it looks really good. Let's see if it feels like S, as Taylor might say. That paint
That's
job
when you
looks
just
pretty
walk
good,
over
but let
there.
me dig into the details and see if it sucks actually.
Guess you could have used a little more sanding.
Yeah. Should have buffed that one out, huh? God, this thing sucks. Anyway, see you later.
Wow.
But no, yeah, it's I'm trying to remember. Recently, I kind of had a Taylor situation where it was a sumo actually. But Taylor, you can tell your stories. But I flew in my sumo, and some little kids ran up and decided. What was weird was they like grabbed it, and then I think they realized that the one person that happened to be walking towards the only rocket that was out there must have been the guy that was coming to get it. So they set it back down. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, we made sure it was all still together for you." And as much as I would request people tell their kids not to do that, in that particular case, it kind of gets more of a pass from me than if like grown-ups were to just start touching stuff. 'Cause like maybe these kids are just a little misguided. And I told them, I was like, generally don't touch people's rockets out here. That particular case, I would have appreciated it if they did for one reason, and that would have been to like put a rock on the parachute or something. But that's a specific to me case because it was getting drug across the ground. I don't like particularly have, after this rant I just went on, I don't particularly have a problem with people touching things. It's just if you're being helpful. But in
like
general,
when Bob folded up the chute for the 12-inch.
Yeah. But
that was
that's
great.
Bob. Yeah. I mean, it's not some random guy, and he knows what happens when a big parachute fills with air like that.
Well, I think it's perfectly fine to deflate someone's chute. Like if I come across someone's rocket, I'll always do that. If it's inflate, if it's like being drug or just looks like it's going to inflate or whatever. But don't, only if that seems like it's going to be a problem, and then don't move the rocket unless it looks like it's like been sitting.
Yeah.
or something weird, like it's like a Estes rocket, but it's like a mile away, and you're like, yeah, no one's gonna find this.
Right. You should tell your stories from LDRS,
Yeah,
but I have one as well that I just remembered that's also quite funny.
That whole launch was sort of just bizarre. But I flew a total of 2 rockets, and both times, well, the first one went totally like out of sight, but I had a tracker, and it was going to be like a pretty gnarly recovery. And then I wait for Braden to fly his rocket because he was racked right after me, and then we were going to go recover together, but his landed a lot closer.
With all the ticks and the 3-foot grass.
But yeah, anyway, so I ended up going to drive out to get it, or try to go on the trek for it, and I'll get out to find my tracker signal, and it's moving, and I'm like, that's weird. So I go to get a move to get a better signal or whatever, and then I notice it's, or I guess I didn't notice it was moving at first, but then I did or whatever, and I'm like, that's a weird direction. And then these people are just like, hey, do you have a U.S. Army rocket? And I'm like, yeah, it's a Little John. And they're like, oh, we have it. And I was like, okay. In that case, I actually wasn't mad necessarily, because I knew the recovery was going to be really bad. So I was sort of like, oh, well, okay. Because it apparently landed somewhere where like it would have been, they were on their own like really gnarly journey to find a rocket. Yeah. And so
it's worth noting too, though, that they were in a truck. So like you would have been standing out there if they made it all the way back. And you're like, I swear it was pointing this way. And like, there's no way it went this way. But somehow it's
if I hadn't like conveniently ran into them, I think I would have been a lot more like peed off.
Yeah.
That one doesn't work.
Oh yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't sound good, does it?
No.
Better to pee off than pee on.
PO'd. There we go. That's what you're supposed to say. Peed off. Don't say that. Anyway, the second launch was my little fiberglass sumo, and it landed pretty close, but it was out in the range. So we were following the rules, like we talked about earlier. Range is closed, so we're going to wait to go get it.
Yeah,
I needed to walk right by all the launch pads. And it was hot, and I didn't have a bottle of water. So I thought, well, while they fly these rockets, I'm going to walk all the way back to our car that's a quarter mile away and get a bottle of water. Since I don't have anything else to do except stand in the sun because there was no tents around. So come back, and then by the time I make it back to the range head, my rocket is just sitting on the RSO table.
Yeah. It was really funny too, because you were like all geared up for it, and I came up to you to tell you something that had just happened, and you're like, gotta go get my rocket, and then literally like 10 seconds later you're like, is that my rocket? And it's just sitting on the table at the front.
I was pretty PO'd.
Yeah, he was peed on, or whatever you said.
I was pretty peed off, let me tell you.
But yeah, it was crazy because it was like 5 minutes. It was like somebody was like, "Oh, it landed right by him."
Well,
like, okay, cool.
And the rocket just flew. It flew off of that rack, so it hadn't been sitting out there for more literally 5 minutes after it flew. Someone picked the thing up and brought it back, and so I started wondering: is this just a thing up at that launch site where it's like, oh, people just pick up everyone's rockets and everyone's happy about it?
It could be because the recovery of that launch site is so treacherous that might just be standard procedure.
I guess that rocket was perfect, best case scenario for recovery. It was 1,500 feet away in the open field.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I feel like this story is going to read weird for people that aren't all the way in on rocketry stuff that might have made it this far. They'd be like, why is this guy complaining about this? He's like, oh, it was so irritating. I didn't have to go get my rocket. But
I guess I get some people would be like, oh, guess I don't have to go walk for it. But
right.
To me, it's part of it. I want to see the rocket, how it landed, see if there had been some sort of damage, I would have been interested to see it and not wonder, oh, did someone drop my rocket and break a fin?
Right.
Do the post-mortem and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, that's a tough one. But in general, as much as it seems like you're helping, you definitely should not touch people's rockets. But yeah, that's actually our last stop there. But I did have one quick one to tell. At LDRS 40 at Lucerne, I flew that rocket separation anxiety, the one I got for free and then gave away after it flew. And it was hot out, really hot, because it was Lucerne in July, and I anticipated that my GoPro that I put out there for a pad cam was not going to catch anything, and it did. And what it caught was me turning it on, making sure the electronics were on, and then it sat and kept recording in the heat through a 20-minute cycle where for some reason they didn't fly my rocket, and continued recording until somebody went out there, put a level 3 project on the pad, and somebody saw my camera and turned it from my rocket to the other rocket.
It's
and
so
then
crazy.
It stopped recording. That is one thing I will very specifically request, is that you never touch my camera gear unless my rocket has already flown. If you want to take my GoPro to the RSO, at Argonia specifically, but typically don't touch my cameras, please, because those rockets, there's always a little bit of anticipation of something going missing, but never do I think a GoPro is going to disappear or be turned away from my shot. So please don't do that. I was so irritated. I was like, who did this? I really wish they had pointed it at themselves first on accident while they were turning it. I was like, no way he thought, somebody must have set this down and it's for this rocket. It's oddly conveniently pointed exactly at this other rocket that hasn't flown, but clearly this goes to this rocket, and turned it. So I don't know who did it, and it's not like I would have when yelled at him about it. Remember, we're being nice people, but I would have been like, okay, why though? And I'm sure it probably was exactly because they had a bunch of cameras for that rocket. It was probably somebody like, oh yeah, sorry, I thought that was just one of our crew members set it down, and whatever that happens. But generally, it goes a long way. We're going back to the don't ask or don't worry about asking dumb questions things. Ask, is that ours or is that somebody else's? Problem solved.
That reminds me of I mean, on a related note, I guess, I've seen it happen to you a bunch, and I assume it would happen to other people, but like, don't be really upset with anyone that has a camera that doesn't like film or take pictures of your rocket. I don't know. There's just people. There's people that always go. There's certain people that will come up to you and and be like, "Hey, can you? My rocket's on the pad right now. I need you to get a video." And you're like, "Oh, I'll try."
Right.
And then they'll come back and be like, "So did you get the video?" And you're like, "I don't know," or I don't know. I thought I was busy. Like you're prepping a rocket or something, and someone will just be like, "Hey, get a video right now." And it's like it's that different if you come up and say, "Hey," you're like, maybe you like are friends with them, and you're like, "Hey, would you mind trying to catch this if you're able to? If not, no, like no big deal." And you're like, "Yeah, sure." Like,
right. Also, please, if you ask if I caught your rocket and I don't remember, please don't be upset about that. And if I do remember and say yes, generally, please don't ask me to watch the video right then and there because I've shot like 170 clips that day and have to find specifically your rocket. And this does give me one last grandstanding place here, okay? People ask me all the time if they can get a copy of the video that I shot at their rocket, and I say, yes, you can watch it for free on YouTube when I put it up, or you can pay me for the work that I did and drove all the way out here for and used my very expensive camera equipment for. And the policy is always the same. You pay what you think is fair. I don't really care how much it is. It's just the principle of understanding that. And I'm going to extend beyond myself here. Anybody that got a really good quality video of your rocket or a really good quality picture of your rocket, if they didn't come up to you and offer it to you, and you are asking somebody for that cool picture or video of your rocket, offer to pay them something. Nobody owes you anything, and camera gear is really, really expensive. And we've known photographers for a long, long time, and Postart is one of them. Shout out rocketry.pics, even though the website's kind of broken right now, but
we're working on it.
Yeah, we know a couple rockets. Like people just really don't want to pay for it, and it is a service, just like anything else. So, like I said, your video, if I shoot a video of your rocket, will always end up on my YouTube channel that you can watch for free. If you want a copy, whatever you want to pay is fine. Post it on your own YouTube channel, post it on Facebook. You monetize it on YouTube. I don't care. But it's the principle of the thing. And mostly I want to bring this to the table for our photography friends because it comes up a lot. And if there's photographers that want to be grandstandy about it on their own and be like, well, I don't charge anything, stop talking.
Yeah.
You can give your pictures away for free if you want to. That's great. I'm happy for you. But your choices do not make obligations of others. Is there anything else I can do to call somebody out? Is there something else I need to be mad about while we're here?
You can call me out. I need to get going.
All right. We're literally about to end it.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize that. I mean, I know we're all right. Well,
Matt with the early exit, but one more thing.
Call somebody
no,
out.
I'm just. All right. Well,
something else that really
grinds my rocket
me off is when people leave the podcast 5 seconds before we're getting ready to end it.
God, Matt, you're like, oh, I can't make it this week, and then the second you get here, oh, I gotta go. It's like you have a job and a house, a life outside of rocketry. Stupid, dude. Anyway. My name is Braden Carlson. You can listen to me whine and complain about everything and anything on Rocket Vlogs on YouTube, and you can find me on Instagram at BigB1011.
My name is Taylor Jesse, and you can find me on the Rocket channel on YouTube.
Real monotone. Solid.
Thank you. My new thing.
My name is Shane or Postart. You can find me on YouTube at Postart Propulsions, and I'm working on Rocketry.pics for rocket pictures.
Woo! My name is Matthew Myers or Macho Matt, and you've been listening to NPR. Thanks for tuning in.
No, don't say that.
No.
Oh, we're getting a cease and desist. That is
I've
it.
already got a cease and desist from NPR for a podcast before. That's not a joke.
Let's scratch that out. Let's scratch that. I didn't know what I was
not
getting
affiliated.
That's a story for another time. But I did actually get a cease and desist for a podcast about cars that I started from NPR. It was awesome. And by awesome, I mean terrifying.
I'm Macho Matt, and you're listening to the S&P podcast.
Maybe you can bleep that out.
I will. We'll probably take it. I'll probably leave it because it's funny. But just to clarify, we have no association with NPR, and I don't want to hear from their legal team again. Thank you. We are the Anti-Gravity Group, and this is the Anti-Gravity Group podcast, and it has been kind of a crazy episode. And if you want to hear me complain about something, leave it in the comments. Otherwise, we will see you next time.